So today we're going to be talking about form in HTML, which is another key point that we need to know uh, before we're moving into CSS later on. Most of the sites you are going to see these days online, they are based on interaction, where you go online, you chat with your friends, you upload pictures, you do everything that you want to do there. But mostly you always have a form of interact with users online. But how do you create a site uh, like that? You need something referred to as form, because with form we can collect information or data from the user of the site. Everything that we have been doing since is all about displaying information to the user, but with form we can get data or we can get information from the user. For example, here, this site, before you can do anything there or before you can see what they want you to do on the site, you need to log in or you need to sign up. And as you can see here, there is a box for us to input our email address, and once the email is pointing, then the stuff is going to sign in, or you can even log in with phone number like this. So what is this box here? This is part of a form that we have in HTML. And today we're going to see different controls that we can use to generate element on the screen that we can use to collect the data that we want from the user. Like this Laranar now, before you can do anything there or before you can post, you have to register or log in into their site. And clicking on this register now, as you can see, we have this box where I need to fill in the email, and from there I will click on submit. And based on the information I'm submitting here, I'm going to get an email, and from there I will be able to log in into their system or into the site. Again, too, online on Facebook, if you want to upload or if you want to post anything, rather, there is a box for you to type your mind, the text that you want to post to the user are there. So what are they using on this site to collect data from the user? They are using what we call form. Even the Google that you used to use every time is using form, because without it there is no way you can give the site information. As you can see here, this is Google here, and we can type anything we want inside the box. So how do I generate this box, or what are they using to bring out this element out? That's what we want to talk about today, because with form we can use it to collect information or data from the user. And what are you going to be using to collect information from the user? Under the form, you are going to be using the controls. So under the form tag, you are going to be using the controls. And I separated this control into different categories here. So we have the input controls, we have the select controls, and we have the text area control. And the reason I'm separating them like this is because they come with the way you have to work with them. The way you work with input is quite different from the way you work with select, and at the same time different from the way you work with text area, or what text area is doing is quite different from what the input is doing there. But the major one that you always use or that you always see online is input. The most used control of the phone is input, because under the input we have different types that you can specify that you want to use. But when you're talking about select, we only have one type of select. When you're talking about text area, we only have one type of text area. But for input, we have different types, and based on the types you supply, it's going to generate the elements that you want on the page there like that. And again, all these controls is not a must that you have to put them under the form tag, but in a traditional way when you want to collect information from the user and you want to process all this information together, we normally wrap everything inside the form tag. So which means when you want to collect data and you have a lot of information that you want to collect and you want to send all of them together as one form, then we can wrap all our controls under the form element. So we have the form element which you can use to group all your controls together. So what we use form there is to group all the controls together. And again too, the browser is going to do some magic for you behind the scene when you put all your controls inside the form element. So when you want to collect information and that information you want to collect, you want to send all of them at once together there, then you can put all your controls under the form. But that doesn't mean you cannot use the control on its own. You can use them on their own, just that you have to do some extra work to group all of them together through JavaScript later on. But for now, we don't care about JavaScript. We are going with the traditional way of grouping all our controls together under the form element. And what are the controls you are going to be using? I mentioned the input, I mentioned the select, and I mentioned this text area. And we're going to be starting with this input because that's the most used control that we have out there. Even Google, the box you are seeing right now is input. But based on the type or the design that you see here, that's just what is going on. So the reason it looks like this is because of CSS and JavaScript that have been wired along with the input control there. For our own, we are going to be working with the simple stuff until we get to the CSS and the JavaScript part. So how can you bring in your input? So to use input, we have this tag that you need to call. And this input is a self-closing tag. So when you are dealing with input, it is a self-closing tag. So you don't have open and closing with input. When you are dealing with input, it is self-closing tag. Once you open it, it closes back on that same line. But how do we now talk to it that we want different types of input? That's where the attributes that we've talked about comes in. So with attributes, you can use the type attribute to talk to your input that, okay, this is the type of the input that I want, not that type, or the type is displaying right now. So when you call the input, by default, it's going to give us this type text. So when you don't specify the type of the input that you want, this is what is going to give us by default, a box where the user can type anything they want. So a box where the user can type anything they want, that's what the input is going to give you. So what I have is on line 30 is the same thing as us using the input like this. So let me just type input and let VS Code to complete the stuff for me there. And once VS Code complete this stuff, you see that it's actually putting this attribute there. And the attribute is this type. And through this type, that's what you can use to talk to your input, the one that you want to display to the user. So whether you put this attribute like this or you don't put it at all, both of them are the same thing. So if I save it, you see that this one too is going to give us a box where the user can type anything. So line 30 and line 31 they are the same thing. But the one you should always use is the one that I have here. You should always specify the type. Even though if you don't specify it, it will be default to text. But you should always specify it. And if you use VS Code to generate your input by typing input and press enter, it will always do the right stuff for you by putting input of type text. But this is not the only input that we have. You can have other inputs there by specifying the type that you want. So instead of text, we can actually specify other type of input, as you can see them here. So we have checkbox, we have color, we have date, date time, email, file, and so forth like that. So these are different inputs that you can use based on the information that you want to collect from the user there. So if I want the user to be able to select their passports. Maybe you are creating a site where the user can upload passports or they can upload file. We can use this input type of file. And once I save this in and it gets to the screen, you see that we are going to get another set of inputs. So based on the type you supply here, you are going to get the UI or the element for that particular type of input that you mentioned. And as you can see here now, I now have a button that I can click. And once I click on this thing, you see that it will open out the modal for me to pick the file that I want to upload. But right now, we don't care about that. We are just generating the element. The uploading process will come in later on when we are dealing with the advanced stuff. But for now, what we are focusing on is to generate the element. And the element we are currently generating right now is the input. But the inputs are come with different variants there. So we have different types of inputs. And how do you get the type you want? You mention the tag, or you bring out the tag, and you give it this attribute type. Then inside the code, you supply the type of the input that you want. So if I want the input that is meant for email, what I just need to do is to use input, then followed by type email. And on the screen here now, as you can see, it's going to give us a box to type. But look at it now. There's not a suggestion for us for email. It's not like the first one. As you can see, there is no suggestion because that one is text. So it can be anything. But since we are using input type of email, this box knows that whatever we want to type here have to follow a proper email pattern. And if I type anything that is not following email, as you can see, the browser will be giving us this warning that, or this kind of an info that we need to include at, because when you're dealing with email, you're going to have something at something dot something. So that's the way the email used to look like. And that's what this thing is asking right now, because this is not the valid email. Because we said that we want to receive input from the user, but the type of the data you want to get, or the type of the input you want to get from the user, is email. And that's the reason why the browser is giving us suggestion. And this suggestion is based on the email I've already used on this system or on this browser on the other side there. And that's what this site is using here. That's what this site is using here. Can you see? It's giving that same suggestion. The difference between our own and this one is just CSS and JavaScript. That's the reason why you see that this message is coming out and the line is changing to red, because we will not fill anything, or we did not fill it properly. But that one is CSS and JavaScript that we're going to be seeing later on. But for now, what we are focusing on is to generate the box, or to generate the input where the user can type. And for your input controls, it comes with different variants by using the type attributes. And based on the type you supply, you are going to see the UI on the screen. For example, now, if I use another type of date, you see that we are going to get another set of UI again, which is different from the one we have for email. Can you see? So here now I can click on this thing and it's going to bring out a box for me to pick a date. Since we have input of type date, what we can do here is to only pick date, and you can change the year. And the way this thing is going to display is depending on your browser and the system you are using. So like that. Because I'm using Windows and I'm using the Edge, so it's being displayed like this. But if you use another browser, it might not be like this, or the UI might be different. But you can create your own later on using custom HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But once you use input of type date, you are going to see this box coming out. And once you click on it, you see that a modal will pop up and you can select the date that you want. So if I click on today, as you can see, it will pick the today's date, which is 24/2/2025, like this. So this input, this is not the only attribute that you can use with it. We have other attributes that you can use with input. Other attribute that you can use with input is what we call placeholder. So look at this box here now. Can you see? It looks like there is a text inside the box, but actually it's not a text. It's just a placeholder, which is telling the user what they need to input inside the box. Because right now, look at this. Merely looking at this box, will you know that you are supposed to input email here, or it displays you are going to input email? No, until the person that created the site is telling you that, okay, this is what we want here. But instead of you doing it or leaving your box to be empty like this, you can actually give hints to the user by telling them the type of the information that you want from a particular box. And we can use this attribute known as placeholder to leave a text or to leave a dummy text inside the box explaining to the user what you are expecting inside that box. And we normally use this placeholder. So here now we just say enter your email. So whatever you put inside this placeholder, that's what is going to be displayed inside the box when you've not typed anything. The only time it will show is when you've not typed. As you can see, this is what we call placeholder. Whatever you put there, it will be displayed, but once you start typing, it will be removed because it's not the actual text, it's just a placeholder. That's why the color is faded out. So it's not the actual data. This one is just a dummy text that you are using to talk to the user that this is what you want inside this box. And for the first one too, I can use placeholder for that one by just saying for this box one, enter. So this one should be enter your username. As you can see here, I have the first one. So anybody that wants to use this input now, we know that what they are supposed to put inside the box is their username, and for this one, what they are to input is their email. As you can see here, even though both of them look alike, but based on this placeholder, the user of the site knows what they are supposed to put inside the box. But it's not every site that used to use it, but it is good that you use placeholder. As you can see, this site now is not using placeholder at all for their box. But for this site, as you can see, they are using placeholder, and it all depends on the site. So you're going to Google too. Let me clear this in. As you can see, Google too is not using placeholder inside this place. So it all depends on whether you want it or not, or based on the design that you are working on. But almost all the modern design these days always use placeholder to give extra information to the user that this is what you want inside the box. But when you type inside the box, that placeholder will be removed. The only time you see it is when you don't have anything inside the box. And please, placeholder is only useful when you have a box where you can type. If you have any box that you cannot type, placeholder is useless. Like this date now, you cannot use placeholder there because all these things are there already, they are showing. So there's no way placeholder is going to show. So there's no way placeholder is going to show here because you have the text already there. Your own is just to update the month. So 03 for the day, that's 25, and for the year 2025 like this, so 2025 like this. So or you can click on this box and it's going to bring out a modal, and you can click on any of the dates that you want. But anytime you have box where the user can type and there is nothing inside it already, the placeholder is going to come aside if you use it in the HTML. If you don't use it in the HTML, then you are not going to see anything on the screen. Apart from placeholder, there is another element that we normally use inside our form, and it's something that this site is using here, and this is what we call label. So apart from placeholder, we can use something known as label. We can use something known as label. And what is label? Label is just like placeholder, but it's an element on its own. So it doesn't go inside the box. It always stands on its own. And what advantage of label? You can think of label too as you describing what your box is all about. As you can see, whether you type or you don't type, the label is always there. But for placeholder, the only time you see it is when you did not type inside the box. But once you have something typed inside the box, that's you see that the placeholder is going to be removed from the box. But instead of using only placeholder, you can use what we refer to as label, and that's the same thing you see here too. So to describe what your input is all about, or what your controls is all about, the data you want to get inside the box, you can use label or placeholder to give the hint to the user that this is what you are expecting from that place. And to use label, is an element on its own, just like what I mentioned before. Place is an element on its own, so we just need to type label, and after typing the label, inside it, that's where you put whatever text that you want to showcase beside your controls there. So for this one now, I'm just going to put username there, and once this thing load, you see that on the screen we are going to have this username beside our input. And as you can see in my code, I'm putting all this in on a separate line, but on the screen they are on the same line. So let me remove this in. As you can see, all of them, they are on the same line because there is no space. That's why it looks like they are on a separate line. They are not on the separate line, they are on the same line. So which means all the inputs, they are inline elements. So all the inputs and the label, they are inline elements. So when you type them, they go side by side by default. The reason why it looks like they are not side by side is because I have this browser reduce and I increase the screen so that you can see everything there. But normally, if there is a space, they are going to go side by side, and that's what is happening with this label and this input here. But you know that if we want them to be on a separate line, we can use the BR to move them to a separate line. So saving this code, you see that if I expand this browser, they will always be on a separate line because now we are now breaking them into multiple line by using BR, and that's what I'll be using as from this moment on, because this email and this date here, I don't want them to be side by side. So what I can do here is to use my BR element again, and you see that it's going to put them on a separate line. But the label is used when you want to display information beside your controls to explain to the user what you are expecting from your form. So look at this side too. As you can see from here, user know that whatever they are to put inside this box is password. Again too, look at it. This is another label. We know that whatever you need to put inside the box is your referral code. So you won't be typing something else inside this box because they are telling you already here that what you have to put inside this box is referral code. What you have to put inside this one is password, and what you have to put inside this one is email, and they are using the label to kind of explain to the user. So me getting to this place, I already know what I'm supposed to put inside each one of the box, not that I will just be guessing what I'm supposed to put there like that. So I'm going to move this one down like this, then use my BR again. Then before the input here, I'm going to have another label. And when you type the label like this from VS Code, it's going to generate this attribute for us. But right now, we don't need it. We'll be talking about it later on when we get to the time that is needed. But for now, I will skip this attribute because we don't need it right now. So for this one, is going to be email address. So what I want to use as my label is going to be this text. And once this thing gets to the screen, you are going to see that we have all this item placed side by side because I have the label and the input. And since there is no BR in between them, they are going to be placed side by side. But after the input, I have this BR so that I can have the next content on another line. And I'm using 2 BR so that I can have 2 lines. So the more BR you use, the more line you are going to create in between your inline or the element that you are breaking there. As you can see here, we have more gap in between them. So we have the label and we have the control, which is the input, but it's of type text. So for the second one, we have the label and we have another input control, but now the type is email. So which means anytime you are using type of email, the user will always get suggestion on their browser to fill in their details based on the email that I've already used on this browser before. But how do we create this type of input too? So look at this box. As I'm typing, whatever I'm typing is not showing. This is what we call input type of password. So when you want to generate this type of input, you are going to Details is going to be password. Then after that, we are going to have another input. But this input now is not going to be of type text, it's going to be of type password. So we want it to be of type password. And when the user doesn't have anything inside the box, I still want to have a placeholder, which is going to tell them that enter your password like this. So when we don't have anything inside the box, that's the text we want to show. And for the label, whether there is a text or no text, the label will always be on its own there. And you can move it to the right or to the left, which is what we have. Generate the controls. So the only thing we are focusing right now is to generate the controls, not to use them. We are not using them yet. We are just generating all these controls. And later on, when we are actually working on a redesign, you are going to see that all these things will start coming in later on there like that, because this is what we'll be typing. The only thing we'll just do later on is to add CSS so that it looks nice, just like the way it is on this site. But for now, we don't have anything like that, so it's going to look ugly like this by default. But with CSS, we can make it look nicer to the user. So we have the input of type text, we have the input of type email here. So the username is going to be this is what I want to use for username. And for the password, as you can see, as I'm typing, what I'm typing is not showing. Why? Because we use input type of password. So inputs come with different type, and based on the type you are using, you are going to see different elements on the screen. One is of type password and this one is of type text, because you are just inputting. You can input anything you want inside it. So input of type text can accept anything you type inside the stuff. But how do we submit our form? Because if you look at this site now, as you can see, they have a button to submit the form, and at the same time, to look at this side, they have the button to submit the form, or they have the button for this search beside this box here. So how do we create or how do we display something like that? So that's where this other element comes in here. So when you want to submit your form, you can actually use a button tag. So we have a tag known as button. This is the simplest way of you creating a button that can submit form. And inside the button, you can place the text that you want to show on the screen. Because if you look at this side now, you see here it is submit, but here it is search. So whatever you put inside the button, or whatever text you put there or element you put there, that's what is going to show on the screen. And you can put anything. It's not a must that it has to be text. You can put image, you can put anything you want inside the button. But right now, I'm just going to put text because we are dealing with simple stuff. So in order for us to submit our form, we have this button, and this is what is going to trigger submission for your form. But right now, we are not going to submit anything because we don't care about submission. We are only generating the element. When we get to the time we need all this submission or to process the form, we are going to be doing that one later on. But for now, we don't care about that. We are just generating different elements to collect information from the user. We don't care about the submission right now. We are dealing with HTML. So if I click on this, or if you fill anything inside this box, you are going to see that once I click register, it's going to submit the form. But where is it submitting the form to? It's just submitting it back to this page. And we did not even do all the necessary stuff that we need to do in order to get the data. So for now, we don't care about the submission. What we care about is to generate the element. And when you are generating the controls, we have the input, which is what we are talking about right now. We have the select and we have the text area. And each one of them have when you are to use them. But the most used controls that we have there is input, because it comes with different types that you can use, like text, email, password, number. This one will give you input where you can type number and it can help you to increase it up and down. For example, here now, instead of using file, I can use number. And once this thing is saved, you see that there is going to be another controls here. And now can you see we now have a controls that we can use to add number. So inputs come with different types that you can use. And once you remove this type and you press Ctrl space bar, as you can see, you are going to see a lot of them, like this datetime looker here, that allows you to pick both date and time. The one we have before is just to pick the date, but with this datetime looker, as you can see, you can pick both the date and the time. Maybe you are building a site for people for invitation and they need to go to the site to register, so you want to know the time they are going to arrive at the place, so and the date they are going to get there. You can use these controls now to get that information from the user. So they need to specify the date they are going to be there, and at the same time the time they will be there. So 9:51 p.m. and as you can see, it will fill in the details, and this thing now can now be sent to the backend that we talked about before. So we use our controls along with the form, get the information, send it to the backend so that they can save it for us, and that information can be used wherever it needs to be used later on the site or outside of the site. But our own is just to collect the information, process it, and save it or send it to where the data is going to be saved. And in order for you to collect information, you need to use the controls that you are going to use to collect the data from the user. And right now, we are focusing on the input. We talked about the label that we can use to describe what your input is all about, because you are going to have a lot of them. So how is the user going to know that they are supposed to put username here or they are supposed to put email here and so forth like that? Through the label, you give a descriptive text that is describing what that input is all about. And based on this text now, anybody that wants to type here knows that they are supposed to put their username. But that doesn't mean some people will still put it. If I want, I can just type nonsense here. So people don't follow like that. And that's the reason why JavaScript is needed later on to add all these validation. As you can see here, this thing is knowing that it see that I did not input the password correctly the way they want. And that's what they are giving error now, that I'm not inputting the correct details. Just because you give them a box to input something doesn't mean user will follow it. So you still need to add validation. But right now, we are not doing all those things. When we get to the advanced part or when we get to the JavaScript later on, you are going to see how to do all these things. But for now, we don't care about that. We are only generating the controls to collect information. And to collect information, you either use the input, select, or text area are there. And under the input, we have these different types that you can use to collect different type of information. So like text, email, password, number, colors, file, where the user can click to pick their whatever file they want to upload in your website there like that. So you can use input to collect different type of information. But apart from this text, all this simple one that I have at the top, I have this complex one down here like radio or checkbox, because they are kind of crazy, and the way they work is really tedious. But checkbox is quite easy, but with the radio it looks alike but they work in different way. And when you are talking about checkbox, this is what we call checkbox here. So this box that I can check and uncheck here, this is what we call checkbox, and it's input that you are going to use to generate it. And in order for it to display to you like this, you just need to give it input type of checkbox. So when you want to create an input and you want to have that kind of a box on the page or part of your form, then you need to use input with the type of checkbox. And that checkbox, it will come out automatically on the screen. So instead of using text, we can use checkbox. And once I save and go back to the screen, you are going to see here that we now have a checkbox that we can click on. So it's still the same input, but we are using another type. So input of type checkbox will give you this kind of a box that you can click to check and uncheck. So this is checkbox. And you know that if you want to describe it, just like the way this site is doing here now, you can see beside this there is a text. So we can do something like this by just go to the front of it, of this checkbox, and we use our label because the text is in front of it. So in front of the label or inside the label, we put the text. And if you look at it too, these are terms of use and privacy policy. They are links. So which means if you click on it, it will take you to a particular link. So here too, I can just put this one too in a link. Don't forget, you can couple your element together so that you have the design that you want. And those are the things we'll be doing a lot later on when we learn all these basic HTML tag that we need. So we have the input. After the input, we have the label. And inside the label, I have the A tag for the times of use and this privacy policy here, because they are going to be a link later on. Once they are clicked, this thing is going to take you to a page for these times of use. As you can see, after clicking on it, it takes me to another page where I can see their times of usage like this. And as you can see, what we talked about last time, which is this our list. So when you need to list out some item, as you can see, they are using unordered here. But if you like, you can use ordered list. And as you can see too, there are different headings that is here depending on what you want to showcase to the user. So everything that we've talked about in the previous classes are what they are using here. So the heading text, like the H1, they have like your H2, and again, they have like H3, they have the list by using UL and so forth like that. And again, down here, this is button here that you can use. So clicking on open account like that, as you can see, it's taking us back to this page, and I can input my details again and it will bring out all this box out. So everything that we've talked about, including what we are talking about right now, is what this site is using, apart from the CSS and the JavaScript that is here. So everything that you are seeing here, this is button 2, this is link, this is your normal text, which is the paragraph, and so forth like that. Everything are here, and you are going to see how to combine all of them together once we are done treating each part separately, because we need to talk about each one of them before we start combining them together later on, because that's how you use it. You won't just be using form alone like that. You combine it with other HTML tag, and as you can see here, we are combining it with this our BR, we are combining it with label, we are combining it with A tag here. And once this thing is saved, you see that I have the text beside it, which the link for times of use and this privacy policy, even though they don't have any link right now because I did not put anything inside the href, but it looks like what we have on this site already. The difference is just the styling that we don't know about yet, but it looks like what we have up there. And I can duplicate this BR so that we have enough space in between this register and this content. I can do it for the one at the top too, so to make sure that this thing is having space in between each other. But to generate this space later on, you are going to see a better way of doing it through the CSS. But for now, we're always going to be using BR to separate our text or the elements that we want to break to multiple lines. So the input, we have the text, we have the checkbox, we have radio. I'll be showing you the radio one later on there because that one is quite complex and I don't want to waste time much on this thing. When we want to be using them later on, it won't be that hard to explain all those other ones rather than just bombarding everything inside a single class, and we'll be wasting time on HTML because there's a lot of HTML tags that I have not even touched, but they are not the major thing right now. These are the major one that you need to know first. The other one can now come in later on. It will be easier to grab other one once you know all the basic one that we have here. So the input controls come in different variants, and based on the type you are using, it will give you different UI elements. So the user interface, that's the UI. So as you can see, for the file, this is what it's displaying. For the datetime, this is how it's going to display. For the checkbox, this is how it's going to display, where you can check the box and uncheck. And for the text, you can input anything. For email, this one will tell you to input correct email. If I input something that is not a valid email, here like this, and if I try to register, can you see what it's doing? After clicking on register, Can you see that it tell me that this thing is not a valid email? How does it know that it's not a valid email? It's because when you are dealing with email, it have this @ there, and apart from that @ it has some other extra text after it. This thing is not checking that your email is okay. The only thing it's just checking is the pattern. It's not checking whether that email is correct or not. The only thing it's focusing on is whether that email is following the correct pattern or not. And what is the pattern? You have some random text like this. It doesn't care whether it's correct stuff. And you have art, you have some random thing too, and you have something like this. As you can see, it will accept it. It doesn't care whether what you are typing here is okay or not. The only thing it's following is the pattern of email. And once I register now, as you can see, no complaint again, and it submits the form. But where did it submit the form to? We don't care about that one right now. When we get to the processing of form, we'll be discussing about it. Right now is just to bring out these different elements to showcase on the screen by typing the correct tag that is going to generate the element there. And we talked about this type attributes that you can use on your input. Again, we talk about placeholder, which allows you to put dummy text inside your box. But this is not the only attributes that you can use right now. There's a lot of attributes that you can use on your input, but I won't be using them for now because we don't need it. But later on, you'll be seeing me using something like this, required. And what does this mean? It means when you want to submit your form, you must fill something inside that box. If you don't fill anything inside the box, it will not allow you to submit. So if I click on it, can you see it's bringing out this error that please fill in the required field. And the reason it's showing this one is because of this attribute here. But that doesn't mean it's still checking what you are typing. It's just checking whether you've typed something there or not. Even if it is space, it will accept it. So, but for now, we don't need them. That's why I said we don't need them, because when we are building real stuff, that's where they are going to come in. Apart from this required, we have something like class. This is another attribute that I'm going to talk more about when we get to CSS. Again, ID. This is another attribute that we need to talk about later on. We have mean, we have max length. So there's a lot of attributes that you can use. But when we need them, that's when I will be bringing them in later on. But the basic thing you need to know now is that you have input, and you have the type, and you have the placeholder. And based on the type, you are going to get the corresponding elements on the screen that you want to display to the user there. But apart from this input, we have this another type of controls that you can use, which is known as select. So this one is really useful when you have a lot of options and you want the user to pick from the list of that option. That's where select comes in. So select allows you to give user a list of options. There is not left for the user to pick from that list. For example, you want to register online and you are going to see something like country. We know country already. You are not supposed to be typing it. So we give you the list of countries. It's not left for you to pick your own from that list. The same thing here too. If you look at this, when you want to include phone number, as you can see, there's like a drop down here. After clicking on this thing, it comes outside. So it's not left for me to pick the one that matches my country. So I can pick this America like this, or I can pick Rwanda. And this is what we call select here. So select is like a drop down where you have a list of options for the user, and it's not left for the user to pick from that list of options. But how do you generate it? So let me collapse this one and go under this H3 for select. So I'm going to be creating form 2. This form 2 comes with some attributes that we can use, but for now I'm not going to use them because we don't need it. We are just generating the element. When they are needed, I'm going to bring them out later on. So inside this place now, let's have our label again so that it can describe what we want to collect from the user. So we want to collect their email. So after the user is done typing their email, which is for us to receive the stuff through the input of type email like this, and after that, let me use BR so that we can have enough space. So the next thing we want to collect from them is their level. So we want to collect the level, and we know the level already. We know the level that is always from 100 to 800. based on our application, the level that we have is 100 to 800. But we don't want them to type. Their own is just to pick from the list of options. That's where the select comes in. So this one too, we need the label so that we can talk to the user what they are actually picking. So select your level or select your cloth shirt. Maybe you are building a site for invitation of your club, and you want each one of the user to pick their size of the clothes. You don't want extra large, or you don't want small, or you don't want the large for the clothes. What's the color, and so forth like that. Those are the places where select comes in. And again too, what is your gender? Are you male or female or other? Because they don't need to type. We already know what you are going to pick there, but the list is really much, so you need to select from the list of options. So how do you bring select? So we have a tag for that, and it's still the same name. So the name of the tag is known as select. So we don't need this ID and name right now, so I will remove it because they are not really needed. It's still going to work if you don't use them there like that. So we just want to generate the element first. So inside this select, let me save it so that we can see how it looks like on the screen. As you can see here, we have the email box, which is something we've talked about, but now we are adding extract to it, which is now a box where the user can pick from the list. As you can see, it gave us this drop down that the user can pick from it. But right now, there is nothing inside it because our select did not have any option. So whatever you are displaying to the user where they can pick from, they are referred to as options. So whatever you want to display for the user to pick from, they are referred to as option. And we have the HTML tag that you can use for that too. So inside your select, what you are going to be using is option. And for each item you want to display, you are going to create the option for it. Just like the way you do your li inside OL or inside UL. So you can think of select as UL, and you can think of this option as li inside that UL. So for the level now, we know that we have level 100, or we have 100 level rather. So 100 level. Again, I'm going to have another option for 200 level. So for each option, you must generate the option. So again, we have the 400, we have the 500, we have the 6, we have the 7, and lastly, we have the 8. So this is select, and inside our select, we are giving the user a list of options. And from that option, then it's now left for the user to pick one out of it. Can you see now? So now we have all the options. So the user can pick 200. As you can see, that's changed to 200. You can pick 800 and so forth like that. So select allows you to present option to the user that they can pick from that option. So option, you are going to prepare it for them, and from the list, they are going to pick whatever items that matches what they need there. Again, here we can have another one. For example, we want to select the agenda. So let's have the label again, and inside it, we're going to have gender. And after this label, what do we need? We need another select. And inside the select, we know the gender already like that. So we are going to generate the option. So for the first option here, I don't need this value for now. All these attributes, we don't need them. So inside the option, we have the male. So for the second one, then we have the female. And lastly, we have order. So we have a form that we want to use to collect the email of the user, the level of the user, and at the same time, the gender of the user. And now we have the form where the user can input their email, they can pick their level, and they can pick their gender. And how do they submit the form? It's still the same process. So when you want to process the form, you are going to use button. But button is not just used for form alone. It can be used outside of form, because you can use button in different places on a site like that. So this one is going to be register for the program like that. So that's just the stuff that I want to display inside my button. So with this now, we have the select, where the user can pick from the list of options. So select allows the user to pick from the list of options. The time you use select is when you know what the user, or what are the list of stuff, or what are the options that is available for the user, and they cannot pick anything outside of that. So you have a list of options that you want them to pick from, and they cannot pick anything apart from that option. So, and where you'll be seeing all this in is like the gender, which is static. You'll be talking about countries. Maybe you have a program that you want to attend. You already know the list of program that you have there, so there is no need of them typing that program. So you present it to them. It's not left for them to pick the program that they want to attend, and so forth like that. So select is really useful for something like that, and you're going to see it a lot on sites that is presenting option for you to pick on there. For example, like this Remita.net, where you can make payments online. So they have different parastatal that you can make payment to, and those people there, they have the option that you can do there. For example, here, let me see, pay bill, pay tax. They have this, their stuff. I don't know why they've changed this thing, but first, let me just type this Unilorin here. Yeah, so because Unilorin actually partner with them since they're federal stuff, so they should have all this here. So Ekiti State University and Teaching Hospital. So once I click on it, and it take me to a page to make payment, if their stuff is using select there, you are going to see that they have a list of options for you to pick. What are you paying for? So they know what you want to pay for, but it's not less for you. Can you see name of the services? Can you see from the list? So they are using, so you want to pay for rent, or you want to pay for research, or you want to pay for service or donor registration, you want to pay for school of nursing. So we already know what the list of payment you can do. So I want to just release it for you. There's not left for you to pick from that option. So this is select that Remita is using. And as you can see here too, for currency, they have two currencies there. They have the Nigeria one, and you can pay in dollar. And based on the one you pick, it's going to change. As you can see here now, the stuff has changed to dollar. But this is JavaScript going on here that we have not even gotten into it yet. But once you get to JavaScript part and the advanced stuff, you are going to see how to do all this in later on. That as you are clicking here, it's changing something somewhere. But right now, we are just dealing with normal HTML. So you will not be able to do that. So if you click anything here, do not do anything. Do not change anything anywhere, because it's just normal HTML. You need to talk to it. You need to add interaction later on. But for now, we are just talking about the HTML part. And the last one that we have under the controls is this text area. So what is text area? Text area looks like input, but technically is not input. So it behaves like input, but we use it to collect information that can go multiple lines. So when you are dealing with your input like this, as you can see, no matter what you are typing, you can never have it on a different line. It will never go to another line. So, and there's some information that you want to type that needs to go to multiple lines. That's where the text area comes in. So text area is useful anywhere you need to collect information that needs to span multiple lines. So when you need to collect multiple information, or you need to collect a text that is really large and it needs to go to multiple lines, that's where the text area comes in. And that's what Facebook is using. When you go to Facebook and you log in and you want to put something, the box that you have to type your text, what they are actually using there is a text area, because it allows you to input your details and you can press enter to go to next line so that you can continue. Again, so inside this label, I'm going to have the same thing. So username, let's collect username this time around. So we are going to have the input, and it's going to be of type text, because his username is just normal text. So after that, we are going to have double BR. So let me put times 2 so that I can generate 2 DR for me. This is just VS Code stuff. So instead of me typing it again, I can just put times, and it's going to generate that element, the number of times that I put inside. So again, we have the label, but for this label, we want to know about you. Maybe you have a online site, or you want to, we have a site where you can collect information about people that want to come and speak at your event, and you want to know about them. What do? You present a box for them to tell about where they've worked before, their names, their progress, and all those things. But those kind of information now, you cannot use input to get them because they are always long there, and the input is just meant for short information. So input are meant for short information. As you can see, username, email, password, date, and so forth like that. They are short information. They are something that is not long. So like that. But when you have a text, or when you want to collect a text that is really long and it needs to go to multiple lines, then you have to use the text area. And to generate text area is still the same thing too. Just mention the name of the tag because it's just one. We only still have one text area. We don't need all this name and ID for now. And as you can see, this one is having both opening and closing. It's not like the input that is self-closing. This one have both the opening and the closing there. And once I saved this code now, you see that on the screen we are going to have a box where the user can type. Can you see? It's quite different from this is input, while this is text area. So input, whatever you are typing there is always on one line. We are dealing with input, whatever you are typing there is always on one line. You cannot press enter on your keyboard to move to the next line. But with select or with this text area, whatever you are typing can actually go to another line. As you can see, it's wrapping to another line, and you can continue like that. And again, you can even increase the box if you want, like this, and it's going to expand. So this is text area here, while the one at the top here is input. So text area is useful when you need to collect large text that needs to go to multiple lines. So I will go back into our index and let me copy a text here. For example, like we use this data whatever stop. Let me paste it inside this our input. Can you see? Everything is just on one line and it's not readable. Because anytime you have a long text, it will not be readable because you are scrolling from left and right to read the text. But it will be nice if this thing can move to multiple lines. So if I paste the same text inside this box, can you see the way it looks like? So once you get to the end, it will move the remaining one to next line. And this is a text area in action there. So text area allows you to collect large text that can span multiple lines, while input is useful when you need to collect information that are really short, just simple information like your email, the password, referral code, anything that is short, you always use input. But once you see that the text you want to collect is really large, then you use text area. And when you have a list of options that the user can pick from, then you go with select. And again too, you can actually use this checkbox when you have a list of options too that they can pick from, and they can pick any one of them or even remove the one they don't want from the list. And you are going to see this in action when we get to a proper design. But this is just the simple stuff that you need to know about form right now. So this is simple stuff that you need to know about form right now. And in our next class, we are going to be talking about the last part of the HTML before we moving into the CSS. Not that we are done with HTML, but we are done with the basic. Like in the next class, we are going to close on the basic HTML, then we move into CSS so that we can now combine the two of them together to be able to do something like what we have here. Like this email now, as you can see, is having this background color. The color is different when I'm on top of this. Is using this orange color, but once I leave, the color changed back to yellow. Coming back up here, as you can see, anytime I'm on top of the button, it's always orange, but once I leave, it changed back to this thing. So how do we do something like this? How do we make sure that our box is rounded at the edge? How do we make sure that our text is white is not this black that we currently have. How do we change the background of the page and so forth like that? So we talked about all this one in the CSS. Then we now bring everything together, and any HTML that we've not worked on, then we'll start bringing them one by one. Then after that, we now go into JavaScript so that we can add interaction, just like what is going on this side. As you can see, let me reload the page. The first time you get to this page and you've not done anything there, as you can see, there is no error message coming out. And again, to the box is this gray color. But once I enter and I leave without typing anything, as you can see, the line changed to red and this error message is coming out. Again, look at the password is not showing, referral code is not showing. But once I type email, that's when it's now coming out. This is interaction here. As you interact with this box, something is happening on the page. So you need JavaScript to be able to do all this one. And if I delete the email again, you see that those boxes will disappear. So they are not showing it until you have the email. It's when you have the email that they will now come outside. And again too, as you're typing the box, as you're typing inside the password, they are checking whether you are following what they are expecting. And what are they expecting here? They are expecting you to use at least 8 characters. It must be a mix of letter, number, and symbol. But if you check what I type now, it's just letter. There is no number, there is no symbol. And that's why it's showing error. But now if I want to create a valid password, I can just do something like this. So password. So I'm going to use symbol, then 1, 2, 3. Can you see now? Can you see that the text changed? This is JavaScript here. So things are changing, or the way you are interacting with your text, it's creating an element or removing one element or adding something to the page or removing something on the page and so forth like that. So you need JavaScript and you need the CSS to be able to apply color for green, or the colors to be red, or to be yellow, or to be blue, and so forth like that. That's CSS. But JavaScript will now be adding the interaction. But HTML is what you are going to use to generate the element. So the icon here is just image. And you can just go online, look for the check mark icon, and you just add it there. Or you can use SVG that will be showing you later on without using image. But you can still use image too for SVG. Just that you can use SVG directly inside your HTML code, and you can style it from the CSS there. But image, you cannot change the color of image. Whatever you use, or whatever the color of the image that you use to link it, that's what is always going to be there like that. And I can click on this, their site, not now. So what's their site? So let me just apex.school. So let me copy this. Maybe I can go to their site, press enter, and you see that we have their site where they explain what they are doing and they use different elements. But now, how do you do something like this? That the color on this text will be different from the text that you have. Even though they are together, but the color of this one is different. But right now, you already know how to include image. So what they are just using here is image. This is button going on here. It can be a link, but you style it like a button. Again, to this link, which is the A tag. All this in an A tag, but CSS is what makes it to look like this. This is image too. But how do you do all this thing? It requires CSS there. And as you can see again, as you are scrolling down, some of these items, they are scrolling in. But later on, once we are done with our CSS that we need, we are going to build something like this. This exercise site, we are going to come there and use it to practice everything that we've talked about. But we're going to be doing it bit by bit, not that we just come here directly and start building this big stuff. No, we start bit by bit, then we start progressing there. And once we are comfortable with what we need to do, then we now move to this page and design this exact site here the way it is like this, like that. So that is going to be all for today. The assignments you are going to be working on, I'm going to be sending them to you there, because the one I have on the PDF, some of them we can't do it right now, but I'm going to be sending the one that you can work on for practice, because you need to practice, not just listening to what I'm saying alone. You need to practice everything, because that's how you learn. As you are typing it, that's when the thing is going to stick to your head, not just listening or watching the video again and again. You must type it yourself. And those assignments are very, very important there, because they will make this thing to stick to your head like that. So this is where I'm going to be stopping for today's class. So in the next class, we are going to be talking about grouping of elements. So in the next class, we are going to be talking about groupings of elements, because when you want to start working with CSS, you see that the way the elements are placed on the screen, they are in a form of group. So how do you group all those elements together? In the next class, we are going to be talking about what you can use to group your element, or what are the HTML code that you can use, or what are the HTML tags that you can use to group other elements together on the screen. For example, now look at this site. You see that the way the elements are placed, they are kind of like in a group. So look at all this one, they are placed at the top. Even at the top too, you see all this one, they are placed by the left side, while these two are placed by the right side. So they are grouped together. Even this one too, they are grouped. So how do you start grouping all your elements? Again, all this one, this is a group, but inside this group, you have the left side and you have the right side. But why am I doing it like this? Is because of the CSS you'll be using later on. You need to group your element in this way so that you'll be able to apply the CSS that will place them side by side. Inside this left too, you have your title, which is your H1, you have your paragraph. Then apart from that, this is another group, because inside this group, you have this text and you now have all these images here that are grouped too, that are now being placed side by side. Again, this is another element, which is image. So if you look at the way things are on the page, they are always in group. So how do you group all your HTML together? That's what we'll be talking about in the next class, and I will be introducing you to CSS after talking about some of the elements you need to use to group together in this way. Everything you want to do on the page, or when you are building your site later on, the elements are always in group. Even look at here too. You see they are in different groups. So this is one group on its own. This is another group on its own. Again, this is another group, and so forth like that. And inside that group, you have the heading text, you have the paragraph, and you now have the image. But all of them, these three, they are grouped together. Again, here too, it have its own heading, it have its own paragraph, and it have its own image that you want to show. So we've already know how to generate heading text, how to generate paragraph, how to generate image. But when you are using them, you always combine it together, or you always group them together to form the design that you want to showcase to the user there. So how do you group them together? That's what the next class is going to be all about. So that will be all for today. Let me stop recording.